Ever notice how the universe is wildly obsessed with bell curves? If you measure the heights of people, bell curve. Measurement errors, bell curve. Test scores, also some kind of bell curve. So in this video we answer the question, why is the universe obsessed with bell curves? And I'll explain the Central Limit Theorem to you. Okay, but first let's answer the question, what is this bell curve? Imagine we measure the height of a huge group of people. Then we just draw a horizontal line and place different sections or bins along it. For example, in this section, we put everyone with a height between 155 and 160 centimeters. In the next section, we put everyone with a height between 160 and 165 centimeters. Now we take each person's height and put it into the right section. Each time a section gets a person, its bar gets a little taller. After many people, the bars form a clear shape. When you look at the real world, you can see that most people are around an average height. So this height is the most common. That's why the graph is highest in the center. As you move towards the edges and look at the very small or very large heights, you can see that the bars are much lower. This is because those measurements are rare. So there are fewer people who are very short and there are fewer people who are very tall, so the right side is also lower. If you then trace a smooth line over the tops of these bars, you see that a mountain or bell curve emerges. So if you draw a graph of how many people have each height, you often get a bell shape, also called normal distribution. Okay, and now back to the main question. Why are so many things normally distributed? Let's start with something easy, but it's basically the beginning of the story. If I take random stuff like this die, I can roll it multiple times. And again, instead of only writing down the numbers, I can put them into a histogram. So every time I roll the die, I add one small mark to the number I got. So if I repeat this many times, the small marks stack up and form a bar. Now we have a histogram or a frequency bar chart that counts how often each number appears. But hey, it doesn't look like a bell curve. It looks more like a flat rectangle. The outcomes are 1 through 6. Each one is equally likely. So the result won't be a bell curve. It will be a flat rectangle. So for example, the probability of rolling a 1 is the same as rolling a 3. Every number has the same chance to appear. So we get a flat distribution. Okay, but we want a bell curve. So what happens if we don't use one die, but 2 dice? If we take 2 dice and roll them again and again, we can add the eyes and record the sum. Now something interesting happens. With 1 die, the distribution is a flat rectangle. But with 2 dice, it starts to look like a triangle. But why? When we sum up the eyes of 2 dice, we can get values from 2 to 12. If we roll 2 1s, we get 2. If we roll 2 6s, we get 12. So the only way to get 2 is with 1 plus 1. And the only way to get 12 is with 6 plus 6. But what about 4? We can get 4 with 1 plus 3, 2 plus 2, or 3 plus 1. And the king of all sums is 7. 7 has the most combinations, 6 ways. So when we complete the picture, we can already see a triangle shape. The middle sums like 6, 7, and 8 are more likely, and the edge sums like 2 and 12 are less likely. That's why the shape becomes a hill, almost like a triangle. So with 1 dice, the histogram is basically a flat rectangle. With 2 dice, it becomes a hill, kind of like a triangle. But where's the bell curve?
So here's the next step. What if we don't stop at 2 dice? Let's add more dice and always do the same thing. Roll them, add the eyes and put the sum into a histogram. And since doing this by hand is a bit boring, let's take a look at our interactive lab. If you want, you can find the link in the video description.
Here we can choose how many dice we want to roll each time. And there we can start the simulation. For example, if we select one die and click Start Simulation, we can see the possible outcomes from 1 to 6 below. And if we wait long enough, all outcomes should appear equally often, so the distribution should be a flat rectangle. To speed it up, we can click Roll 100 times, so we roll the die 100 times at once. And if we select 2 dice and sum the eyes, we should get a distribution that looks like a triangle. Again, let's speed it up and now we can clearly see the triangle shape. Now let's use 5 dice. Each time we roll the 5 dice, we add the eyes and record the sum in the chart. Let's again speed it up. Now the shape is not a sharp triangle anymore. It starts to look rounder, so it already looks quite bell-shaped. So let's try 12 dice, and after a long time, something crazy happens. The histogram starts to look like a real bell curve. Let's speed it up and roll 100 times a few times, and it looks like a bell curve more and more. So if we scroll a bit down, we see the final result. If we use 1 die, we get the flat rectangle shape. If we use 2 dice, we get the triangle shape. And as we add more and more dice, the curve looks more and more like a bell curve, so like a normal distribution.
But now the big question, why does adding more and more random dice rolls slowly turn into a smooth bell shape? Here's the simple reason.
Each die roll is random. But when you roll many dice, you usually get a mix. A few low numbers, a few high numbers, and many in between. So when you add them up, the total usually ends up near the middle. So there are many ways to get a sum near the middle. But on the other side, to get a very small sum, almost all dice must roll low, in the extreme case only once. And to get a very large sum, almost all dice must roll high. That is also rare. When we add more and more dice, this effect becomes stronger and smoother, and that's why the shape turns into a bell curve.
Okay, I think we all get it. If you add up lots of dice rolls and repeat the experiment, you start to see a nice bell curve. Now, what exactly is the central limit theorem? To get there, it helps to look at how it was discovered. So who invented the central limit theorem? Well, it wasn't just one person. It was more like a very long group project, stretching across nearly 200 years.
One of the first people to notice the pattern was Abraham de Moivre.
He was a mathematician who studied probability. His work was strongly influenced by problems in games of chance. He was kind of a gambling math guy. He wanted to understand questions like this. If you flip a coin many times, how many heads do you get? But de Moivre had a problem. When the number of flips gets big, the calculations get painful. So he looked for a shortcut. And that's when he noticed something important. If you flip a coin many times and count how many heads you get, those counts start to form, tada, a bell curve.
So he discovered this. Lots of random yes-no events start to form a normal curve.
So if you add up lots of two-option results like yes and no, left and right or 0 and 1, the totals tend to form a bell curve as well. And if you don't believe me, let's have a look at the so-called Galton board.
Here we drop a little ball from the top. At every back, the ball can bounce either left or right, and each bounce is a 50-50 choice. 50% of the time the ball will bounce left, 50% of the time it will bounce right. And at the bottom, we note which section the ball falls into. So let's just drop one ball. The ball bounces left and right and finally falls in this section.
And each bounce, left or right, is like a coin flip. You can say left is head and right is tails.
And now we see the same kind of magic as with the dice. One ball is unpredictable, but when we drop hundreds or thousands of balls, a clear pattern appears. Guess what? They start to pile up into a bell-shaped curve at the bottom.
And it's the same logic as with the dice. So the Galton board is the Central Limit Theorem in action. Many small random steps add up and create one smooth bell-shaped pattern.
For a ball to land all the way on the left, it would have to bounce left at almost every back. And since every time the chance is 50%, that's really unlikely. The same is true for the far right. It would need right bounces again and again, which is also rare. But around the middle, there are many different paths. The ball can go left sometimes and the ball can go right sometimes and still end up near the center. So the Moivre was on the right track.
It wasn't the full Central Limit Theorem yet, but it was a big first step. So let's make the next step and move to Laplace. Laplace looked at de Moivre's idea and said, cool, but what if it's not only coins? What if it's many kinds of random things? Laplace pushed the idea much further and made it more general.
When you add many small random things, the final result becomes smooth and bell-shaped. And finally, the mathematicians like Lyapunov and Lindbergh made it more precise and stronger.
So what's the actual Central Limit Theorem? And don't worry, first I'll tell you the definition and then I'll explain it visually so that it isn't hard to understand.
So the Central Limit Theorem says, even if you have a distribution that is not normal, it could be exponential, binomial, or log normal. It could be nearly anything. If you repeatedly take random samples from this distribution and compute the mean of the samples, then the distribution of those means becomes approximately normal as the sample size gets larger.
Okay, and now let's make this clearer with an example.
The theorem says we can start with almost any base distribution. So here you can choose different kinds of distributions. Let's pick the exponential distribution. It clearly does not look like a bell curve. Now we take a sample from this distribution, for example, a sample of 20 points. You can see those 20 points here. From these points we calculate the mean and plot it below. Then we repeat the same process. Take another sample of 20 points, calculate the mean and add it to the histogram. And we can do this again and again and again. So now we are building a histogram not of the original values, but of the sample means. Let's click Simulate. And now you can see that the distribution of the sample means starts to approach a normal distribution. If we increase the number of points in each sample, the bell curve becomes even clearer. And that is basically the Central Limit Theorem. You can start with almost any distribution, take repeated random samples with a large enough sample size, and the distribution of the sample means will approach a normal distribution.
Of course, the central limit theorem is not magic. It does not work perfectly in every situation. For example, if your data points affect each other, for example in time series, the result may not look normal. Or if your sample size is small and your original distribution is very skewed, you may need a much larger sample before it looks normal. Okay, but I have another question for you. Why do casinos get rich? That's what we'll discuss in the next video. My name is Hannah. I hope you liked this video and I'd be happy to see you again soon.